Hi there, welcome to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Felicia Mesadieu. I am a creative and professional graphic designer based in Houston, Texas. I work for a startup tech company in the aesthetic space, and I freelance on the side. I love to document on my channel design and my experience in design, leveling up in my career in design, and I love to talk about my life. I love to document my life. So if you're new here, welcome to the Felicia experience. Recently on my channel, I announced that I am transitioning into UI UX. I recently purchased and enrolled for the Course Careers UI UX Bootcamp program. I have been in the program for about, by the time you watch this, I'll probably be in the bootcamp for about 3 to 4 weeks. And I thought that I have been loving the experience so far, and I definitely am gonna see it all the way through. But I figured I would discuss my journey as a graphic designer. If I'm gonna talk about my experience on the channel, leveling up in my design career, gaining rare and valuable skills, and adding more tools to my toolkit, I figured I should tell you about my graphic design journey. So here's my story. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I went to elementary and high school, and I went to college in Omaha, Nebraska. I went to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. We'll start as a child, and then we'll quickly progress to when I was in college. So as a child, I have always been into the arts. I've always been I was always somewhat of artsy creative. I just didn't have the tools to really hone in on whatever my craft would be, but I would doodle a lot. I would doodle flowers, and I would do like some really cute flowers. I would doodle shapes, I would doodle faces, I would doodle bodies, and I would doodle fashion designs. I loved clothes. And when I was younger, I thought to myself, ooh, I either want to be a singer or I want to be a fashion designer. And as I got older, as I matured, and by the time college hit, I just didn't see either one of those being a realistic career for me, just because I didn't have the support that I felt like I needed. I didn't have anyone saying, oh, you can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you want. That wasn't my case. And so I just went with what I thought was an acceptable major. So at the time, I think I majored in business by the time I got to college. Now, I wasn't a traditional college student. I didn't go immediately after high school. I took some time off. I took about 1.5 to 2 years off, and then I transitioned into my college work. So by the time I got to college, I was like 19 years old. And so yeah, I went to college, and during that time I was a business major. I majored in business, and I just was going with the flow. I wasn't the best student, but I was getting decent enough, good grades. I would say I got good grades in my freshman year. It was really when I transferred to the other college that I went to, which was the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I had a season of not doing so well because I just didn't really know what my place was at that school. I didn't know what my major should be. I was majoring in political science, and that just was not the best. It was not a good fit for me. So it took me almost 2 years to really figure out what I wanted to do. And then I decided to be a broadcasting major. I felt like that was a better fit for me. And I thought with being a broadcast major, I would either go into fashion journalism of some kind, and I also thought that I would maybe end up on TV. I would do like E News, be like a fashion correspondent or something along that profession. That's what I thought that I would do. So I knew that I wanted to be talent on TV. I knew that. And I knew that I wanted to talk about fashion. I just didn't know in what realm that I would. So I started a blog. Someone introduced me to fashion blogging. I started a blog. I really became obsessed with that and I blogged for a while. So that was my introduction more into like a snippet of an introduction into design, because you have to design your own website, your own blog. So I was trying to learn how to code HTML for my website. I remember turning my face into a cartoon, and I remember asking some of the graphic designers in my college, like that were they were a part of my college because they were doing multimedia, but they also had graphic design skills. And I remember asking them, hey, can you help me with this for my website? And I also was introduced to multimedia because of broadcast news. So I was working in Final Cut Pro and working with media and using the camera to record myself, record my stories, and I had to edit it. So I was learning all that multimedia, all those multimedia skills. Those were all the skill sets that I was gaining. I was trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to couple fashion and multimedia? I also remember in college taking a costume design class. I loved that class, but I did not know how to sew, and so that was like a handicap for me. So I remember sewing a little something, but it wasn't great. But that was when I realized that I could actually sketch. I doodled a lot, but I realized I was sketching because we had to sketch a lot in that class. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually pretty good at sketching. And that was my introduction to watercolors, and I liked it a lot. And I remember I had to paint the costume of these two characters, and I loved it. But I didn't know how I would couple, again, I didn't know how I was gonna couple the two as far as costume design. And the college that I was going to, all it offered was costume design because they had a theater program. We didn't have a fashion design program. So it just didn't make sense to me to keep pursuing it. I remember someone told me that I could do an independent study, but I just thought to myself, oh, I'm already a broadcast major, and I was not a high achiever in college. I just wanted to hurry up and get through, get my degree, say I have my degree, and get out. I wasn't really thinking about skills so much as I was just thinking about getting the degree, saying I have a degree, and getting out. So honestly, broadcast news I don't think was really the best fit for me either. I didn't even really love the news in that way. Once I learned about the news and what it takes to be a news reporter, a news anchor, what makes news timely and current, the sensationalism of a news story, it wasn't for me. As I was getting closer to graduating, I somewhat had this fear. Also at that time, I was like 25. I remember I was just trying to get out. And I was so young thinking back at that time. I was just thinking about, I've got to get out. I should have graduated at 21 or 22. I'm almost 26. I need to get out. And that 26 is so young. If you are 25 or 26 or even in your 20s and you're thinking about, oh my God, I'm so old, stop it. You're not old. So I really wish that I would have stayed to really figure it out, but I was racking up them loans, I'll tell you that much, because I was supporting myself. So I did not want to stay in college any longer. I don't even think I had much more funds to put towards a degree. And I'll be honest with you, I did not have anything lined up, but I knew I was getting that degree and I graduated. Throughout that whole entire program of being a broadcast major, we were told over and over again that we weren't going to make much money in the profession. You make the money when you are an anchor, when you move to a bigger market. And Omaha was a bigger market, but you have to start in a smaller market. And so I was constantly told, hey, you ain't gonna make no money. And I think realizing how hard it was to be a news reporter for me, and then realizing that I didn't even really care for it, but then I wasn't gonna make any money, I did not really pursue it. I think I may have applied 1 or 2 places, but I just didn't pursue it. I had an internship and I had some connections at a news station. I didn't really pursue it. After I graduated, I did think about going back to school for graphic design. I thought about it because as a fashion blogger, I took an internship, and I remember a graphic designer also being within the internship, and she also, like, she had all these skills to provide, and I wanted to be a graphic designer. I really thought that it interested me, but I didn't know enough about the field to pursue it after I graduated from college. And in Omaha, Nebraska, it's just not a place where creativity is celebrated. It may be now, but when I was in my 20s and when I was in my teens, creativity wasn't celebrated. You weren't there. I felt like if you wanted to pursue a career in the arts, or if you wanted to pursue a career if you wanted to be a creative, you were encouraged to leave the city. You weren't encouraged to stay. And I didn't see myself leaving at the time that I graduated from college right away. So I just didn't see myself being able to pursue a career in graphic design. I didn't understand enough about the field, and I didn't know how I would make it a sustainable income for myself. I thought that it was one of those things where I would like have to hustle, and that wasn't me. And boy, was I wrong. You could definitely make a living doing it, even in a place like Omaha. You will have to hustle, but you can do it. And so I just want to mention that I did think about it, but again, not believing in myself, not believing in the process or the journey, I ignored how I felt. I took on a customer service position right after college, and I stayed in that for 3 years. And then I just started my YouTube channel within that time. Started my YouTube channel, and I started editing more. At this time, I think I was using Adobe Premiere, Adobe Premiere Elements, and that was a cheaper version of Adobe Premiere Pro. I was using that, and I really started to have fun with video editing, which is all a part of multimedia and also somewhat of a facet of design. So I was having a lot of fun with that, and I wanted to do more with it. So I was talking about fashion and hair, and I was still trying to blog, but I wasn't consistent. And I should say that although I had a fashion blog, I never was super consistent. And I think it was because I just really didn't fully believe in myself. I didn't fully believe that I could be this major blogger from Omaha, Nebraska. I had enough hope to do the blog, but I didn't have enough hope to stay consistent that it would actually turn into something, and that it could be that I could produce an income from it, a full-time income from it. So I was never consistent with it, and it would really irritate me that I wouldn't be consistent. So I was in Omaha. I was becoming so stressed and unhappy and depressed because I had friends there that became family, but I didn't have biological family there. And so I was so depressed, and I ended up, it was always a dream of mine to move to California because I wanted to be in entertainment, but I just didn't know at what capacity. And my sister and my mother were there, and my sister and my mother were campaigning for me to come there, more so my mom. But my mom and my sister were campaigning for me to come there. I came there, and I didn't really come there with a concrete plan, but my sister was able to pull some strings, She ended up getting me a job at the company she was working for at YP. I came on as a data, I can't even remember what I was. I was like a data, something in data. I was doing something with data. And I came on, I did that, and I was living with my sister. I could not afford to get my own apartment. I was living with my sister, and I ended up getting laid off. I wasn't the best employee, I'll be honest. I just was not the best employee. I did not like what I was doing. There's a common theme within that. If I don't like what I'm doing, I'm just not the greatest employee. And when I realize I'm not doing my best, it's time for me to pivot and do something else. So I ended up getting laid off, and I got a job, or no, my sister said, hey, you know what? I told her, I was like, my dream is to be a full-time YouTuber. I want to do it full-time, and I want to do it. And she said, hey, you know what? Let's make a deal. You do this, you can stay and live with us for free if you do these things, and you can focus on becoming a YouTuber. Because I was staying with my sister and her husband and her children. And I was like, okay. And I ended up staying with her and working on my YouTube channel full time, but I just wasn't giving it 100%. I was running low on funds. It was getting to the point where I like pretty much had no money, and it was taking a toll on me being a creator. I eventually had to go back to work, and I ended up doing like a hair series, and I had some micro success with that. Some micro success. I started earning some more money. It wasn't full-time, but it was a nice piece of change if I were to have a full-time job. It would have been a nice chunk of change on the side. So I was doing that, and I was working part-time, and I was starting to get sponsorships. And I also, during this time, I was receiving AdSense from YouTube. So I did that for, I would say, maybe 6 months or so. And then I ended up deciding to get a job, a full-time job, because I was starting to think about my life. I think at this time I was like 33 years old. And I was thinking to myself, okay, I really need to figure out what my life is gonna look like. If I'm gonna stay in California, then I need to figure it out. So I moved in with my mom, because my mom lived in the city. And during that time, I ended up doing a few things. So I remember I was working at Target, and then I remember I ended up going to working for a temp agency. I worked for a temp agency, and at this temp agency, and I was still working on my YouTube channel, but I wasn't giving it the best that I could. And I should say that I always felt mediocre as a YouTuber. I felt mediocre because I didn't have a rare skill. I felt like everything that I was doing, other people were doing. I was just reproducing it on my channel in my style, but I didn't even have like this unique style either. I felt like I was just recreating content that I already saw. I didn't have like these amazing editing skills. I didn't have this amazing storytelling element to my channel. I didn't have any of that. And so I felt always mediocre, and because I felt mediocre, I just didn't give YouTube all that I could. I still wasn't 100% consistent. More consistent than I had ever been, but not the way that I could have been. And so during that time, I decided that I needed to get a full-time job. So I did get a job at Target. I ended up getting fired. It wasn't for me. And then I ended up getting a temp job at this place that was an architectural company. I think it was, I can't remember what it was called, but I ended up getting the temp job there. At this temp agency, I was responsible for going into the Netflix headquarters. Yes. And I was responsible for observing the space and observing what the employees were doing in the space so that this architecture firm could collect all this data and they could decide whether or not the space that the employees were asking for at Netflix, if they really needed it. So if they say they were in the meeting area and they needed a new meeting area, but I observed them and saw that they weren't there for majority of the day, they were basically gonna say, well, we noticed that you don't occupy this space, so we're not gonna build out a new meeting room for you. So that was what I did. And I did that for 2 weeks. Oh, when I tell you, it was the most amazing experience. All the food, the most amazing food that you could think of, the booze. I mean, I didn't drink any of the booze, but coffee. It's one thing to have a full cafeteria with chefs and vendors and everything being free, but to then have a work area that's fully stocked with almost any and everything that you could think of, breakfast. I mean, when I tell you, these tech companies, they spoil you. They really spoil you. I mean, I honestly was excited to just go to the job just to eat. I ate during that temp agency experience. This is what transformed my outlook, my life. This is when I decided, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I was 33 years old, and I remember going into the editing bay, and I was observing what all of the designers, the graphic designers, the motion designers, all of them were doing in the editing room. And it was so cold in there, and it has to be cold in there because of all of the tech, all of the equipment, all of the tech that they're using. So it was so cold. And I remember they had like their own little bar, and they were like, yeah, because on Fridays we drink. They had this little bar cart, and I remember looking at everything in that room. Just all of the work, the creativity that was going on, the motion design, everything that they were doing. And they were just they were a team, and they were having so much fun, and it looked so great. And I remember saying, I'm going back to school for graphic design. I believe I have come to a good stopping point of my design story. Thank you for following me along on my journey in part 1 of my story. I will continue the rest of my design story in my next video, which will be part 2. And if you made it this far, I want to say thank you so much for watching. Type far in the comments if you're still watching. If you found this story interesting and want to see part 2, please tune in to my next video. It will be dropping at the end of this week. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you soon. Bye.